Welcome to part two, The Age of Jackson. Now we're going to talk about young Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was born on March 15th, 1767 in Waxhaw's settlement. Now, he himself will claim that he was in South Carolina. His aunt would say that actually it was in North Carolina. The Waxhaw settlement is right there on the border. But at any rate, he was born in the Carolinas, right? His childhood was kind of a tragedy. His father, Andrew Jackson Sr., died literally just a few weeks before he was born. When the Revolutionary War broke out, he and his brothers were anxious to join the colonial cause. He's only 13 at the time. He's really young. His brothers are older, right? But they're going to be message runners. Well, his oldest brother, Hugh, will actually be a soldier. Now, Hugh will die of heat stroke after the Battle of Stono, right? He and his brother Robert, though, were captured in 1781. They're both message runners, right? Andrew is going to be slashed by a British officer. A British officer is actually going to come up to him, basically tell him, "You shine my boots, boy," and Andrew Jackson is going to tell this British officer where he can shove that boot. The officer, in a fit of rage, is going to pull his sword out and punch him in the face with it, leaving him a scar that he's going to carry for the rest of his life. Now, both Andrew and Robert, while in captivity with the British, will contract smallpox. Okay. His mother, Elizabeth Jackson, will arrange through a prisoner exchange, to allow both of her sons to be released. Okay, Robert's going to die of smallpox. Elizabeth is going to die a short time later. She's going to be actually helping out in Charleston when she's going to contract cholera, and she's going to be dead as well. By the time Andrew Jackson is 14 years old, he's an orphan, and he's lost all of his siblings, all at the hands to the British. So Andrew Jackson hates the British. And I want to be clear here. Andrew Jackson doesn't hate the British. Andrew Jackson hates the British with the steaming intensity of 1,000 suns, because this is how Andrew Jackson is. He is intense in every single thing that he does. So despite being orphaned at 14, Andrew Jackson has enough means to work his way to becoming a lawyer there in North Carolina. He'll apprentice and eventually pass the bar. At the age of 20, he is going to move out to Tennessee territory, right? And there he's going to fall in love. Yeah, I bet you didn't know this was a love story. Yeah, he's going to meet a woman, Rachel Donaldson Robards. And he falls intensely and crazy in love with this woman, right? But there's only one problem with this relationship. No, it's not that she's British. She's married. She's married to a man named Lewis Robards. He's gone off to Kentucky. It's an estranged marriage, and he had said that he was going to divorce her. Rachel Donaldson Robards had assumed that he had done that. Right? She couldn't file for divorce herself because at this time period, women couldn't legally file for divorce, right? So her and Andrew get married, right? But she's actually still married to Lewis Robards. He didn't actually follow through and file for divorce. So now they are committing what is called bigamy. Rachel Donaldson Robards is an adulteress, right? Now, when Lewis Robards discovers that she's living in Tennessee and has married Andrew Jackson, he, of course, is going to file for divorce there in Kentucky. It'll be the first ever divorce granted in the new state of Kentucky, right, in 1793. Jackson, Andrew, and Rachel will remarry, but this divorce and this scandal is something that will come to haunt them later as Andrew begins his political career. So even early on, Andrew Jackson is going to begin building political capital. When Tennessee was made a state in 1796, he'll be the first member of the House of Representatives representing Tennessee. He won't even serve the full term before he resigns. He'll actually get caught up in some bad financial deals and that he'll end up blaming on the banks, and he's going to end up hating the banks pretty intensely. That'll be important later. He goes back to Tennessee, where he continues as a lawyer and breeding racehorses. And it's here that he runs into one of his most famous duels ever, right? The number of duels Andrew Jackson was in is absolutely impossible to calculate. Some estimate over 100, right? But the duel against Charles Dickinson is one of a special note. What had happened was this. Jackson owned a horse named Truxton, and he had arranged to run a race against another horse named Plowboy that was owned by Captain Joseph Irwin. Joseph Irwin was the father-in-law of Charles Dickinson. Okay. But Irwin noticed that his horse was not training fast enough and that there was no way he was going to be able to win the race, and so he forfeited the race, right? A dispute then broke out over how payment should be made, promissory notes or what have you, because he forfeited meant he still had to settle up with Andrew Jackson. Okay. All right. So the terms of the forfeit were settled by the two men, but a Mr. Thomas Swan told Irwin and Dickinson that Andrew Jackson had insulted Irwin's integrity, right? And this comes back on Andrew Jackson. Jackson claimed that anybody that would say something like this is a damn liar. This causes Thomas Swan to challenge Jackson to a duel. Jackson refuses him. He says, no, because you're not the problem. Matter of fact, he writes in a letter, he lobbies the blame for this disagreement all on Charles Dickinson. He says that he insults Dickinson by saying that he is a base, platoon, and cowardly talebearer who will always act in the background, right? This, of course, infuriates Charles Dickinson, and he challenges him to duel. Things have completely escalated. The final straw was when Charles Dickinson insulted the fidelity of Rachel Jackson. Remember, everything about Jackson's intensity, right? You've just insulted his wife that he loves intensely. Of course, he's ready to duel with Charles Dickinson. As a matter of fact, he's so incensed, he says, I will even give you first shot. Which is crazy. Charles Dickinson is a master duelist. On May 30th, 1806, these two men meet the duel. Charles Dickinson looks to his second, and he says, who was worried about the duel, and actually said, let's make it 27, shall we? And what Charles Dickinson was talking about was that he had killed every man that he'd ever dueled with, and there were 26 of them in total. Andrew Jackson was just going to become number 27, especially since Jackson was going to give him first shot. Now, Jackson kind of cheats, though. Jackson wears an oversized coat to the duel, right? So he's kind of floating around. I mean, he's kind of a lanky guy. He's really tall, but he's really lanky. So he's kind of floating around in this coat. Now, typically, a duelist will aim at the breast button of the jacket. That's right over the heart, and that's how you hit him in the heart and kill him. And that's what Charles Dickinson always had done. But where is Jackson exactly in this coat? It's hard to say. The men pace off. They're about 24 feet apart. Charles Dickinson turns, fires, and Jackson doesn't even flinch. And Charles Dickinson is like, I missed? Holy crap, I missed? I never miss. How the hell did I miss? He hadn't missed. There's actually a hole in this jacket with little whiffs of smoke coming out of it. Jackson has been hit squarely in the chest, and that bullet has come to a stop literally just inches from his heart. But Jackson didn't even react. So Charles Dickinson thought he had actually missed. Andrew Jackson takes very slow and careful aim at Charles Dickinson, pulls the trigger, click. The cap doesn't go off. Charles Dickinson breathes a sigh of relief. The duel is over. But not to Andrew Jackson. He quickly looks at this pistol, recocks it, re-aims it, pulls the trigger, and before the seconds can even say anything, pow! This time it fires. It hits Charles Dickinson square in the chest, and he lies on the ground, mortally wounded, with the last things going through his mind. How the hell did I miss? Meanwhile, Andrew Jackson got a shoe full of blood by this point, and when his doctors examined him, and his second looked at him and said, I don't understand. You didn't even flinch. How the hell is it that you got hit and you didn't even move? Jackson's response was, I would have stood up long enough to kill him if he had put a bullet in my brain. Why? Well, because Andrew Jackson.